The jungle whispered with a voice all its own, a symphony of rustling foliage and distant, echoing calls of creatures unseen. Bioluminescent fungi glowed faintly in the underbrush, casting an eerie light onto the thick, twisted roots of the towering trees. The air smelled rich, a cocktail of damp earth and the pungent aroma of alien flora. It was the kind of place where nature held dominion, where life thrived in untamed abundance. Captain Elias Mercer adjusted the straps of his exosuit, the reinforced plating clinking softly as he shifted his weight. He wasn't sure if it was the humid air or the weight of the mission pressing down on him, but either way, he had an itch at the back of his skull that refused to settle. Beside him, his second-in-command, Lieutenant Sophia Grant, crouched low, scanning the surrounding foliage with a practiced gaze. Their team had landed just an hour ago, and already, the jungle had begun closing in around them like a living thing. "Tell me again why we're here," Grant muttered, her voice barely above a whisper. Mercer smirked, eyes flicking to the motion tracker on his wrist. "Orders from High Command. Observation mission. Study the planet, take notes, and avoid unnecessary confrontation. The natives are supposedly primitive but highly intelligent. High Council wants to know if they pose a risk to expansion efforts." Grant snorted. "Right. Because every time humans show up to observe, things stay peaceful." Mercer had no retort for that. History had a way of proving Grant right. The galaxy had no shortage of planets that were once thriving ecosystems, now turned into resource farms or military outposts. But Mercer wasn't here to debate ethics. His job was simple: get in, gather intel, and get out. Behind them, their squad moved carefully through the jungle, weapons at the ready. The 6 of them were some of the best handpicked for their ability to adapt, survive, and, if needed, fight. Their mission, however, was meant to be non-hostile. Which made what happened next all the more inconvenient. A sharp rustling to the left made everyone freeze. Mercer turned his head slowly, his fingers twitching toward the holster at his hip. The movement in the underbrush was subtle, a whisper of motion among the dense leaves. Then came the sound, low, guttural, and undeniably predatory. A shadow loomed between the trees, shifting forward with measured intent. The beast emerged from the undergrowth like something conjured from a nightmare. It stood on 4 powerful limbs, each ending in razor-sharp claws. Its hide was covered in overlapping plates of natural armor, glistening under the soft light of the jungle. Its elongated maw, lined with jagged fangs, opened slightly, revealing a tongue that flickered like a serpent's. Its eyes, 6 of them, gleamed with an unsettling intelligence. "Shit," Grant breathed. Nobody moved. Nobody even breathed. The predator, later identified as a Thanak, according to the ship's database, was the apex species of this world. Faster than a human, stronger than a human, and with a bite force capable of snapping through military-grade plating, the Thanak was the undisputed ruler of the food chain. And it was staring right at them. The moment stretched, the air thick with tension. Then, just as the beast tensed to pounce, a loud crack rang out. The Thanak stiffened, a sharp tremor running through its muscular frame before it collapsed to the jungle floor with a dull thud. A hole, clean and precise, had been punched straight through its skull. Silence followed. Then a voice, deep, amused, and wholly unexpected, broke the quiet. "Well, well, well. What do we have here?" Mercer and his team turned in unison. Stepping out from the dense jungle was a human, a man dressed in worn combat fatigues, his rifle slung lazily over one shoulder. His dark hair was streaked with silver at the temples, and a grin tugged at his lips as he surveyed the stunned soldiers before him. Grant recovered first. "Who the hell are you?" The man chuckled, stepping closer. "Name's Kane. Been living here for about 3 years now. And you're lucky I was nearby, or you'd all be inside that thing's stomach." Mercer's mind reeled. A human. Here. On a planet classified as uninhabited by human colonies. Before he could respond, another rustle in the foliage drew their attention. But this time, what emerged wasn't another predator. It was something much more unexpected. A group of aliens, bipedal, with sleek, fur-covered bodies and large, luminescent eyes, stood at the jungle's edge. They had clearly witnessed everything. Their expressions ranged from horror to awe, their feline-like ears twitching in distress. One of them, seemingly the leader, stepped forward and pointed a shaking hand at Mercer's team. You eat the Thanak," the alien stammered, eyes wide in disbelief. Kane, ever the opportunist, grinned. "Oh, absolutely. Makes for a hell of a steak." The aliens paled. One of them swayed on their feet before another caught them. The leader swallowed hard. You consume our planet's apex predator as food?" Grant shot Mercer a look. This was about to get complicated. The alien leader took a step back, eyes darting between the dead Thanak, the humans, and the rifle in Kane's grip. This changes everything." Mercer frowned. "Changes what?" But the alien didn't answer. Instead, they turned to their companions and spoke in hushed, frantic tones. A moment later, the entire group fled back into the jungle, their whispers carried on the wind. Mercer exhaled sharply, running a hand down his face. "I have a bad feeling about this." Kane only chuckled. "Oh, you have no idea." The jungle's dense canopy loomed overhead, filtering sunlight into fragmented beams that danced across the thick underbrush. Mercer's team exchanged wary glances as the alien delegation disappeared into the foliage, their hurried whispers fading into the distance. The moment of silence that followed was heavy, a pregnant pause brimming with unspoken questions and unshakable unease. "Well," Grant muttered, adjusting the strap of her rifle. "That went well." Kane chuckled, wiping a hand across his brow. "Oh, you're in for a treat. You have no idea what you just stirred up." Mercer narrowed his eyes at the veteran survivalist. "You mind filling us in?" Kane took a deep breath and kicked at the fallen Thanak's massive corpse. "You see, these furry fellas? They don't just fear the Thanak, they revere it. Some kind of cultural cornerstone. Killing one is bad enough. Eating one? Might as well have burned their sacred temples to the ground." A groan of frustration escaped Grant. "You're telling me we just committed some kind of religious blasphemy?" Kane's smirk was wolfish. "Not just blasphemy. Something worse. You've changed the balance." Mercer stiffened. "What do you mean?" Kane crouched down, examining the Thanak's still body. "They've lived in fear of these things for generations. The Thanak is their god of death, their ultimate terror. And you just proved that humans are even worse." He stood, brushing dirt from his pants. "Which means one of two things: either they run and never look back, or they decide to take their fear and turn it into something else." Grant exhaled. "Like a war." Kane clapped his hands. "Bingo." Before anyone could respond, the jungle erupted with movement. Shadows darted between the trees, quick flashes of furred figures slipping through the foliage. Mercer's grip on his rifle tightened. "We're being watched." "Not just watched," Kane said, voice dropping to a murmur. "We're being tested." As if on cue, a shrill cry rang out, high-pitched and piercing. Then another. And another. The jungle pulsed with alien voices, each rising over the other in an eerie crescendo. The squad shifted into a defensive formation, their weapons aimed in all directions. Then, silence. A single alien emerged from the underbrush. Unlike the others, this one stood taller, its fur darkened with streaks of crimson paint across its chest and arms. Its luminous eyes locked onto Mercer's, unblinking, unwavering. In its hands, it held a spear, long and ornately carved with intricate patterns. It stepped forward. 1 step. 2. 3. Then, it plunged the spear into the ground and knelt. Mercer exchanged a glance with Grant. "Is that submission?" Kane shook his head. "Not submission." He pointed to the markings on the alien's body. "That's a challenge." Grant swore under her breath. "A challenge for what?" Kane grinned. "For dominance." The jungle seemed to hold its breath as the alien rose once more, raising its arms toward the sky and letting out a guttural cry. From the darkness, dozens of eyes gleamed, watching, waiting. Kane stepped forward, his stance relaxed yet deliberate. "You see, you didn't just kill their god. You became it." He turned to Mercer, his expression unreadable. "And now, you have to prove you deserve it." The jungle seemed to press in on them, the thick air vibrating with the tension of what was about to unfold. Mercer's pulse pounded in his ears as he faced the kneeling alien warrior, its challenge clear. Behind it, dozens more stood, watching, waiting. The weight of their glowing stares felt almost physical. "Let me get this straight," Grant muttered beside him. "They think Mercer is some kind of god-killer, and now he has to prove he deserves the title?" Kane grinned, arms crossed over his chest. "Pretty much. If he backs down, they'll see him as unworthy and probably tear us to pieces." Mercer swallowed hard. He had faced impossible odds before, but never had he been thrust into a situation so alien, so utterly removed from anything his military training had prepared him for. He had no choice. Stepping forward, he squared his shoulders. "What do I have to do?" The alien warrior rose slowly, its feline-like eyes scanning him from head to toe. Then, it turned and barked a command in its guttural tongue. The surrounding creatures responded immediately, stepping back to create an impromptu arena. At the far end, another alien emerged, this one larger, more heavily adorned in ceremonial markings. It carried 2 curved blades and moved with a predator's grace. Grant exhaled sharply. "You've got to be kidding me." Kane let out a low whistle. "Well, they're not just gonna hand you the crown, buddy." Mercer's instincts kicked in. He rolled his shoulders, adjusting the grip on his combat knife. He had seen aliens fight before, but this was something different. This was a test, a ritual of dominance. There would be rules, traditions he didn't understand. If he made a mistake, it could mean death not just for him, but for his entire team. The massive warrior circled him, its blades gleaming under the fractured light. Mercer watched, muscles coiled, waiting for an opening. The alien struck first, a quick feint followed by a downward slash. Mercer barely dodged, twisting to the side as the blade bit into the dirt where he had stood moments before. The crowd erupted into cries, their voices a blend of excitement and bloodlust. Mercer didn't hesitate. He surged forward, aiming low. His blade sliced across the alien's thigh, drawing a thin line of blue blood. The creature snarled but didn't falter. Instead, it retaliated with terrifying speed, its blade flashing in a tight arc. Mercer barely had time to block, the force of the impact reverberating through his arm. He adjusted his stance, trying to anticipate his opponent's movements. It was like fighting a shadow, quick, relentless, unpredictable. The alien was stronger, faster. Mercer's only advantage was his experience, his ability to adapt. The warrior lunged again, its blade aiming for Mercer's ribs. He sidestepped at the last second, using his opponent's momentum against it. With a fluid motion, he brought his knife up, slamming the hilt into the alien's jaw. The creature staggered back, momentarily dazed. The watching crowd hushed, their glowing eyes fixed on the unfolding battle. Mercer didn't give his opponent a chance to recover. He pressed forward, ducking under a wild swing and driving his blade into the alien's shoulder. The warrior let out a guttural roar of pain, dropping one of its weapons. Silence. The defeated warrior fell to its knees, breathing heavily. Blue blood trickled down its arm, staining the dirt beneath it. Then, slowly, it bowed its head in submission. A heartbeat passed. Then another. The surrounding aliens erupted into a chorus of howls and cheers. The energy in the air shifted, no longer tinged with hostility but something else, reverence. Kane clapped Mercer on the back. "Congratulations, buddy. You're officially their god now." Mercer exhaled, his grip tightening around his blood-stained knife. He had won. But something in the pit of his stomach told him this was only the beginning. The jungle, once thrumming with tension, had settled into an eerie calm. The alien warriors, once on edge, now regarded Mercer with something resembling awe. He had passed their trial, bested their strongest, and in doing so, had cemented himself as something greater than an outsider. But what did that mean for them? For him? Mercer took a deep breath, his body aching from the brutal fight. The defeated warrior knelt before him, awaiting judgment. The crowd's glowing eyes bore into him, anticipation crackling in the humid air. He could feel the weight of their expectations pressing down on him. Grant, ever the realist, leaned in. "So, what now? You gonna declare yourself king of the jungle?" Cain smirked, but his expression was more thoughtful than amused. It ain't about power. It's about what he does with it. Mercer looked down at his opponent. The warrior had fought with honor, skill, and a determination that mirrored his own. Killing him would only reinforce the cycle of violence that had shaped these people's world. But sparing him? That could change everything. He extended his hand. The alien warrior hesitated, looking between Mercer's outstretched palm and the dirt beneath them. Then, slowly, he reached out and grasped it. A ripple of murmurs ran through the gathered warriors. This was not the ending they had expected. Perhaps, it was one they had never considered. Mercer pulled the warrior to his feet. No more blood. No more gods. We fight to live, not to rule. The jungle held its breath. Then, one by one, the warriors knelt not in submission, but in acceptance. They were ready to learn. Ready to change. Cain clapped Mercer on the back. Well, look at that. You might just be the first human to conquer a world without firing a shot. Mercer exhaled, a slow smile tugging at his lips. I didn't conquer anything. I just showed them another way. Grant snorted. You always have to be dramatic about things. As the alien warriors began dismantling their ceremonial weapons, as alliances were forged instead of rivalries, Mercer realized something profound. Strength wasn't just about power, it was about choice. The ability to decide between destruction and creation, between ruling and guiding. The jungle remained the same, wild, untamed, dangerous. But for the first time, its people had a future that wasn't dictated by fear. As the sun dipped below the tree line, Mercer and his team turned toward their ship, ready to leave this planet knowing that, for once, humanity had brought something more than conquest. A lesson. A new beginning.